Hi, and welcome to the Days of Learning podcast. I'm your host, David Nelson, and I am thrilled to have Miss Lynn Greb with us today from Milwaukee Rec. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you, David. Glad to be here. Really excited about our conversation.
You know, we were supposed to do this earlier, and I darned it if I didn't go on vacation, so we had to postpone. And I'm just so glad that we could spend a little time talking today.
I think that just built the anticipation. So yes, I appreciate the opportunity you had to go on vacation, and now excited for this chance to talk.
You know, you were recommended to me by a mutual friend of ours, and I've known you for years. And when the idea came for us to talk together, I said, oh, this is going to be so cool because this is about chronic disease and wellness, and Milwaukee Rec is all about wellness. But before I ask you my first question, I'm going to tell the audience about you. Lynn Greb is the director of Milwaukee Accreditation, leading a team of 84 full-time and more than 1,500 part-time staff. She began her career with the department in 1989, and for the past 30 years has held positions at all levels of the department's ranks. Since assuming what she describes as the best job ever in 2015, Lynn has focused her leadership efforts around equity and is committed to ensuring that all individuals in Milwaukee have access to high quality recreation activities and spaces within which to recreate. One of the accomplishments she is most proud of includes the equity prioritization matrix of the department, developed in 2017 to ensure park improvement projects are completed to where the need is the greatest. Oh, we're going to talk about that one for sure. Lynn received her MS and BS degrees from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. In 2014, Lynn obtained certification as a park and recreation executive.
Whew. Wow. Let's talk with her.
We are doing just that. Lynn, my first question to all my guests is, tell us about your journey. You've been at Milwaukee Rec for a long time, but your journey goes longer than that. But just tell us about how you came to where you are now.
Sure. Well, right. I'm older than 30, so my journey did not start 30 years ago. It started well before that. But growing up, I grew up in the Milwaukee area in the suburb of Brown Deer, and I always had an interest in being active, playing sports, just, all the extracurricular activities I was able to participate in. So I always thought this is my first love. My favorite subject in school was Phy Ed. So that was probably my best subject too. But when I went to school, I wasn't really sure about my major, and I had taken a couple Phy Ed classes, but I knew I didn't want to be a physical education teacher. So I had an intro to recreation class, and I was like, wow, this is a career. Like you can, it's the best of both worlds. It involves the activity side of things, but not necessarily being the teaching side of things. And so that's what I pursued educationally. And I was just really fortunate out of college that I landed a part-time job with the recreation department with Milwaukee, and that blossomed into a full-time job. And I could not have asked for a better place to work and develop professionally throughout, as you said, 30 years. And I think, nowadays, not many people stay in the same job for that long of a time, but the vastness of what we offer as a department was so exciting for me. I saw many opportunities for advancement throughout the years, so there was always that additional challenge. And to me, serving the city of Milwaukee is such a gift to be able to do. There's just such a great need in our community to me, to convey the power of recreation and the value it can bring. Hey, you just talked about going on vacation, right? So, everybody, in my opinion, you work to play, and we're here for you when that opportunity presents itself. So it has just been a great journey. I feel like I'm at the pinnacle of my career now. I get to be really the captain of such an awesome team. To put it in a sports analogy, we're always striving for the same goal as a team, and just to be behind that work is so fulfilling, and just excited to tell you more today.
I can hear it in your voice and I can see it in your eyes for those that are watching. I want to go back though, because you said, this is longer than a 30-year journey, which I think is always good for people, for us to think about. What was it about those early experiences that said that this was the right field for you?
I think, for me, it was the feeling that I always got when I was involved. I mean, I just loved high school athletics. Like that was my motivator. I was a B student, I would say. So, I got by, but my incentive for going to school was always after school and practice and being a part of a team, and the thrill of, competing, being active. I was always, energetic as a child. I don't know if that would be a different view today, but yeah, I had a lot of energy, and I just loved playing games and making things up. And I mean, I think a lot of us can reflect back on our childhood and how fun it was in the neighborhood to get together with your friends and, play all the crazy games we played as kids. And that spirit has stayed with me. Like if you ask me like what age do I think I am, I think mentally I'm like 18 or so, like still a teenager in my mind. Now physically, probably not able to be quite as athletic as I maybe used to be, but that, I think, just the feeling, the euphoria that doing those kind of activities gave me, like to do that all day for a career, like to just be behind the scenes of knowing you're making those opportunities happen for people is just, it's super rewarding. And when you go, site visits, like that's part of the job, to go out and see the, the work that's getting done, and you see people benefiting from the programs that you've put in place. Like it just makes me so, so happy and satisfied to see that, because I know how I feel when I get to, participate in things I enjoy and learning new skills and doing something that's good for you, health wise, and the mental, the physical, and knowing you have a part in that for people. Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm still playing games and still, in that mindset. It is really cool.
It's like you've only been doing it for a couple of weeks and you're still fresh on the job. You said a word that I want to give back to you, which was quite powerful to me, but you said something to this extent of the spirit of recreation. Tell me more about that spirit.
I just feel like I've lived and breathed it for so long. Like the value of what these types of, like what you do in your free time, what you make the choice to do those things. Nobody's telling you you have to do this. You choose to do it for various reasons, for the health, for the learning, for, whatever the reasons. And I just feel like the value of it, I'm just such a believer in it. Like my license plate is recreating, which is, RECRE8N. I probably shouldn't give that away. People see me out riding around, but like, it's just kind of like part of who I am. It's like you walk the talk, and you talk the walk. I think it's walk the talk, but, it just, yeah, I just see the value. Like you see young people participating in, youth sports lessons or leagues, or like there's such a camaraderie that comes around, activities like that. It's just, I feel like people refer to us as the happy department. Oh, you work for the happy department. And I'm like, yeah, we do. I mean, like a lot of us, convey, like you can see, like you say, you can see it in how I talk about it, that you feel good about what you're doing for people. So
It sure is better than working for the sad department, I'll tell you what.
Indeed.
But as you were talking, and I couldn't help but think of, we talk of wellness and we talk of health, but you said the spirit, which that word just is going to stick with me. And you have a spirit about you. I got to tell you, your spirit is infectious. And I've been told that about myself. So maybe it's like there's something kindred about this.
Right.
And I will say that I was more like a C student. So I'll just say that.
Okay. Well, I had some D's and some A's, so I'm
Okay,
with
so
you, David.
it all balances out. But
Yep.
you talked about the idea of mental and physical and how they go together. And you also used the word camaraderie. Speak into that as that relates to the spirit.
Well, I mean, I guess I see that all those things together is really what creates that feeling. Like it's, I guess it's hard to describe, but you know, it's, if it's a mindset or a physical euphoria that, you get from feeling that, you've done, good things for the community. Yeah, it's kind of like, what's here, like what you feel here, as it just helps to believe in what you're doing. And I think that's how it comes through. So yeah, hard to describe a
Sometimes,
spirit.
yeah, sometimes you just gotta, we have a saying in some of the work I do, just say, come see what we do. And then you'll get that feeling too. But I'm glad you used that words to describe it. But tell us about Milwaukee Rec, what you do, because frankly, you're the size of a mid-sized corporation with 1,600 employees. That is massive. So tell us about Milwaukee Rec for those who might be new or those who might think that that they don't know what this is.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. And I always say, like, we just quietly go about our work and we do tremendous things that many people in our city still don't know about. And we were founded in 1911, and it's unique here in Wisconsin that there is legislation that allows school districts the ability to levy tax dollars to provide community recreation services. And so what you find in some communities throughout our state is the school district is actually the entity that is responsible for organizing the community recreation. And that's the case here in Milwaukee. So we fall under the auspices of the Milwaukee Public Schools and the Board of School Directors, but we have the charge to provide the recreation services for the entire city, whether you attend MPS or you did or have family that does, it doesn't matter. Regardless if you live in the city or even out of the city, we are, the provider of the community services for you. And so what's unique for us with this structure is that most of our activities are held in school facilities. And the neat part about that is that we can put the majority of our dollars into programming. So we're masters of programming. Like when you see our booklet come out, it comes out 4 times a year. It's mailed to every city of Milwaukee household. You'll see pages, up to 80 pages of all different opportunities for youth, adults, seniors. And that's in a large part because we run our programs in the school building. So we don't have the capital output that a lot of cities have when they run their own community centers. And so that relationship, we pride ourselves on that. I think it's really unique. I think it's a smart way to do business. And so we are referred to as the city of the lighted schoolhouse because in the early days, in the early 1900s, the idea was the lights were left on in the evening for the residents to come and participate in these social center activities. And that's continued and endured for well over 100 years now. And so we, as far as what the types of programs we offer, it's vast, as you can imagine. We really put our programs into like 5 buckets. We run an after school portion of things. We have over 100 locations that we provide after school programs for young people throughout Milwaukee. We have a athletics and sports division that runs all of the youth sports leagues for the community and high school athletic programs. We also have citywide programs, and that is a number of things. We do a therapeutic recreation programming for individuals with disabilities that want a very unique experience. We have Special Olympics, adaptive athletics, aquatics, senior adult programs, outdoor education. We actually operate a farm, excuse me, in Dousman, Wisconsin, in partnership with the DNR. So students can go out and see where their food comes from in a lot of cases. We also then, another area of our operations is our playgrounds and community centers, our Twilight teen centers. So we run free teen centers in the evenings for young people. I mentioned the book with the 80 pages of classes. And then lastly is our operational functions. So in addition to all of the community centers we operate out of the school buildings, we also manage 52 play fields that we program and maintain and do all of the adult sports leagues, the softball, the kickball, many of those traditional activities. So we could go on and on about the details, but I think, you know, what's difficult is it's so vast. It's hard to put it into like one piece and say, this is who we are. Because whenever people describe what we do, they're always like, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you ran a farm. And what I'll say is what I feel most, you know, strongly and proud of is the affordability that our programs are made available. So we're tax supported. And so a portion of tax dollars that go to our operation allow us to offer our programs at a significantly reduced fee. And also in some cases free. We do free teen centers, free summer playgrounds. We were able to partner with the Red Cross and do $5 swim lessons right before COVID. So we look forward to getting that back up and going, but just getting more people to learn how to swim. So yeah, I could probably go on and on, but I'll stop there in case there's follow-up or.
Well, I am fascinated by the way you described that, Lynn, and I was struck by the idea of when you started off with that we were founded in 1911. And I love that phrase, the city of the lighted school.
Yeah.
Tell me, because I am oriented to the community, tell me what that concept of city of the lighted school means to the community.
I don't know that a lot of people really make the connection to it. And we are on a mission we've kind of done some rebranding over the past year, because we do a lot of times what comes up in our SWOT analysis is, you know, as far as a weakness is our branding and getting, you know, the word out about who we are. And a lot of so all of our outdoor playgrounds, you know, have the symbol City of the Lighted Schoolhouse on the signage. But if you ask people what that means, I'm not sure many would be able to articulate that connection. But whenever we talk to other cities and tell them, yeah, we run our programs in schools, they're like, you run your programs in school? Like, how do you do that? Like, they're so intrigued by it because a lot of other cities have such a difficult time connecting with their school district and making that partnership to, you know, share facilities. And it only makes sense to me. I mean, here's these buildings sitting, you know, empty at night on the weekends. Like, why not take advantage of that? And so to me, whoever came up with that, you know, concept is, yeah, really forward thinking at the time.
So let's do a little marketing then. So what would you want people to know about that concept, the City of the Lighted Schoolhouse? What do you think, you know, with your history and your tenure in recreation, how would you like the two to be envisioned together?
Well, what I would say is that from a taxpayer standpoint, you have the best of both worlds in your community. And so we're being responsible with the taxpayer dollars, because we're saying that we're not asking you to support, you know, additional infrastructure. What we're saying is that we already have the buildings. Now let us do what we do best, and that's the programming. And we can offer you such a large complement of programs because we're not so focused on worrying about the infrastructure. So I think we should be proud of that,
Mhm.
setup that we have in Wisconsin. And there's other communities around Milwaukee that are run similarly to Milwaukee, as far as connections with the school district. And we meet on occasion as a group because we have some unique matters to talk about how we are structured. But it just, in general, it just makes sense to me. And back in the early 1900s, there was a lot of immigrants in the community, so schools were used for foreign language classes. I mean, through the recreation
Mhm.
and showers and meals. And I can't help but think, like, how often things come full circle. And a big part of what we do today is provide free summer meals for young people. The district is obviously doing a lot of meals now during the school shutdown, but just how those social services kind of ebb and flow over time. And I really feel like we're in a place right now where what we do as an organization is still a lot of that same work that was, needed in the early 1900s. So.
I can't help but when I envision that, the idea of the lighted schoolhouse means that it's a safe place. It's a place that people can come. And frankly, it's the fun place where, if you need some recreation, shower, a meal, or learning languages, that is not a burdensome. That is a fun thing. But the idea of a safe space within the community, that's pretty important. Wouldn't you think so?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially, as when I first started in the late 80s, we really didn't run any childcare camps. We did a lot of after school activities, but I think, the family structure, things were different back then. That the term latchkey hadn't quite come on the scene yet. But as we saw the need for more of that wraparound type of service for young people, we started one child care camp, then it was several. And, as I mentioned, up to today, where we have over 100 schools that can be that space for young people after the school day ends to stay for that extra help, or just supervision if nobody's at home at that point after the school day. So I think you're right. A lot of people identify school as a safe place. And so using those spaces for recreation kind of carries the same, I would hope, the same kind of feeling for people.
One of the social determinants that we speak of, we often don't talk about it as much as others. We, for example, talk about food security more than we do about education. But the one that I think that gets shortchanged in this is the idea of social cohesion and social connectedness. And I can't help but thinking the city of the lighted schoolhouse as a place for social connectedness and social cohesion. And frankly, as we just discussed, as a safe place for people to go would be an extremely important part of the stickiness that makes our city the great city that it is.
Yeah, it's funny you use the word the social, because early on, what we now call like teen centers or twilight centers, community centers, were called social centers. So that is kind of the origin of this idea of bringing people together in this space for obviously social activities and so forth. So the name may have changed, but I don't feel the concept and the value of it obviously, endures.
It's full circle, and it
Yeah.
goes back to, again, what was once old is new again, right? I never had a
Uh-huh.
leisure. Let's be clear about that. I never had the leisure suit, but the things come back and they come.
Right.
I thought you would get the joke. Lynn, I want to ask you, in this journey that you've been on, let's say someone who doesn't know recreation, they say, oh, it's 21st century. Recreation is no longer relevant. What would you say to them?
Well, I guess I would say, well, what do you like to do in your free time? And, based on the response, but I would gather I would get something related to recreation. They may not think of it as such because maybe the way we're talking today, it's a little bit more of a formal setting. You know, there may be an instructor in the class teaching you something, but at the end of the day, the term, you know, really is those things you do in your free time, really is considered recreation. So it's such a global term. I think it's really just how you look at it. We are a little more formal in some cases, but in other cases, you know, we are providing those drop-in situations. We have all these play fields that you can come to anytime and use. You don't need a permit or, you know, an instructor to lead you. You can, you know, do your own activities, but so it's kind of how you define it, I guess.
How would you, let me ask it another way, but how would you say it's evolved in the time that you've been here?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, well, certainly what I talked to you about with the childcare camps, you know, when I first came, that we didn't have anything like that. That obviously has changed. And also in the 90s, there was a lot of need for like teen programming that became, you know, really a focus of our operation and offering teen centers. There was a lot of funding from the federal government at that time to create those spaces. And then that kind of fell off, and then that came back around, you know, a handful of years ago. We really shifted our focus and started offering more free spaces for teens again. The other thing is the professional staff, like the longevity of staff. When I started, first of all, it was very hard to get in to a position because they rarely opened up, because everybody that started working here stayed and retired from the department. And I'm probably one of the last that has that long of a tenure. I think, you know, there's just different approaches to professional work nowadays. Like people don't stay in jobs like they once did. And so there's that ever kind of constant transition between staffing. So that continues to make it challenging when you don't have the longevity. You get the freshness in, but you're starting over, you know, on occasion with training and so forth. I'm trying to think of any other. I mean, I know there's a lot, you know, I think just the, you know, evolving with types of activities, like what's interesting to people, you know, catching on the latest trends. You know, like the Zumba was really popular for years, and then that kind of fell off. And, you know, so always, what is that next niche that we can get involved in? We offered classes on raising chickens because the city passed an ordinance that allowed people to, you know, raise chickens in their yard. And so we offered, you know, classes on that. And so I guess partly it depends on where we are as a society and you know, what people are interested in. But we try to stay current with that and keep challenging ourselves.
I love that. And I love it. I love the image of let's offer a chicken class.
Yeah, I think it was called urban chicken farming. But yes,
I can see the staff meeting. I got an idea.
Right. I know.
But when you say that, it's the idea of what people like to do in their free time. And people do like to raise chickens in their free times or figure out where their food comes from. So having a farm is extremely relevant. And I think sometimes people can have a closed mind and they think that they don't want to spend any more money, or that frankly, some people just don't want to spend any money. And so those aren't the people we're interested in. It's really the idea of how we can, you said, be responsible with the funding. And I would call that good stewardship, which I know that there's good value. Brag about your staff, because you got yourself an army there, Lynn. And so tell me about your staff.
Man, I mean, if you could pick a job where you like everybody you work with, like this is the place. I mean, first of all, I think people that are drawn to this profession naturally, first of all, are people oriented, because that's a huge part of what we do, is working with the public and serving, you know, the community. So naturally, you know, likes being around people and providing opportunities for people to, experience positivity. A lot of us like sports, so there's generally banter about, sports teams and just general conversation about that. So, but I think at the end of the day, like we're in this field because we really believe in the power of what it does, and the satisfaction that it gives you to do this work. And so we have, staff from all different backgrounds. Like not everybody that works here has a degree in recreation. In fact, far less probably have that degree nowadays. And maybe they have a degree in social work or education or obviously facilities, landscaping, things that are not directly aligned with the term recreation, but the work we do aligns quite well with a lot of those fields of study. So I think the diversity is another, really great part about our department. We have a very diverse team. And everybody brings something different to the table. And, but like I say, at the end of the day, we want the best for our city, and we want to do what we can to make sure there's opportunities for everybody. And we still have a lot of work to do, but we've been on a path with some of our equity work to, really ramp up what's available to people.
I love that phrase, the power of what it does in recreation. And I go back to that City of the Lighted Schoolhouse as that safe place for people to come, regardless of where they're coming from, but that safe place. I want you to talk about that, because this show is about creating equity in our society and naming those injustices that exist. How is recreation a part of that journey toward equity?
Yeah, I think, a big part of it for me started when we had been looking at our outdoor facility spaces, and we do a great job with programming the sites, but the infrastructure was starting to fall behind. And we just were struggling with where to start, in making improvements. And so we did a analysis of all the sites, and we got some criteria back, and they were all in pretty rough shape. So we were like, okay, do we, flip a coin, start alphabetically? I mean, like, how do we go about this? And that's when I was at a training, and somebody from another city had presented a way they looked at similar work by coming up a methodology that would measure various characteristics in the community, from anywhere from looking at each site and the surrounding neighborhood, and what is the poverty level, and what is the crime rate, and how many young people, live in that vicinity under 18. And, so we came up with our own methodology and really looked at all that, and then came up with a score for each of our sites based on equity. And that's where we started that work. And so, like you said in my bio, I mean, that really is one of the things, like, as I get towards the end of my career, that I feel like so satisfied with, because a lot of work just isn't being done that way. And we owe it to our city, and we owe it to, the people that live in our community that maybe don't advocate for themselves, or have the systems in place, or the connections to do that kind of work. And so is it fair that they don't have a voice? And now, by us taking this priority list and going into these communities that maybe they don't even have a neighborhood organization, but we're still gonna go door to door, around the block, and talk to people and get feedback on how they want to see this play space, revitalized. And so that was a big part of it. And really, from that, I went to one other training, and the question they asked at this training was, is it enough that you send your community rec book out to people, and if they sign up, that's great, but if they don't sign up, oh well, we sent it out, and that's not our fault. And I was like thinking about that question. I'm like, that is so true. I mean, we mail out like 250 249,000 copies of this book, but we don't have 249,000 households registering. But you can't say, well, we did it, we mailed it out. Now it's up to you, David, and your family to sign up. No, we got to go deeper with that work and make connections with other groups in our community. Not everybody's going to avail themselves through this, citywide mailing. And so that led to us creating our own, we call it our Requity Committee, because, you always got to get the rec into things. So instead of equity, we call ourselves the Requity Group, and it's made up of a team of our staff. And we started doing some basic training around equity and introducing the concept, the terminology to our team, and looking at ourselves and our privileges, and really doing some of that self-exploration, and then making that connection to the community that we serve. And so we continue with that work. We also have a team diversity that we meet on occasion, just to talk about things happening in the world, and way we're feeling about things. And then we came up with an inclusion policy. So our commitment to make sure that, as when you read earlier in the bio, that our programs are open to everybody, and that there aren't, and if there is a barrier, we want to work with that person to, get through that. And then lastly, we did a comprehensive ADA plan a couple years ago to assess the accessibility of all of our facilities, and then prioritize improvements around that. So like I say, there's still work we want to connect with different ethnic groups in our city, and find out how can we, work together to be, a resource to some groups, maybe only want to recreate within their own, group, their own ethnic group, and so forth. They're not going to come to the lighted schoolhouse, but we still can, work together and try to, collaborate and assist with maybe leveraging resources to help, again, ensure everybody has that opportunity.
This is such a fascinating concept, and we could spend hours on this. What has been the impact of this Requity work that you're doing?
Okay, so, well, a couple of examples. One is through that we did a mini, well, I don't want to use copyright, but it's a shark, what fish live in.
Sure.
I'll let you, Shark Tank type of activity. And every team had to present their solution to an issue around equity that they were struggling with. So we had, I think it was 5 teams present. One of the teams talked about people aren't taking advantage of our scholarship program. We have a scholarship program for youth that if you can't afford, the class, if you are receiving subsidies, have an economic need, that we want to help, pay for those programs. And so they revamped the scholarship. They changed the name. It's called Everyone Plays now. We did a big marketing push, and lo and behold, we got a huge response from people submitting applications to, we provide $100 a year for qualifying youth to use towards recreation. And it turned that program around. Whereas before we get a smattering of, a scholarship here, scholarship there, word of mouth, and so forth. But by this equity work we were doing, we challenged our team to identify a problem in your area and come up with a solution. And by doing that, we, now, the scholarships, come in more routinely, and I feel like we're reaching a lot more people that can benefit from that. So that was one example. Another one was staff did a video on the bathrooms at one of our South Side. We do, as a matter of fact, have two standalone centers that we operate. They aren't schools, but we have one on the South Side that's programs for seniors and individuals with disabilities. Mm-hmm. And the bathroom, they did a video of one of the participants trying to maneuver into the restroom stall, showing how inaccessible it was. And I was like, this is crazy. And so we now have a contract already in queue. We have a designer on board, and we will be making those renovations to that space this spring. So we can, once we can welcome people back physically into our programs at that site, hopefully it's much better experience with that. So
I love those two examples, and the idea of everybody plays, the idea of providing resources where they're needed most, as well as people with different abilities. What's been the reaction from the community about such programming like this?
I think that's one of the challenges of being such a large entity, is that sometimes the feedback maybe doesn't make it all the way to, like me or, a manager. It may come at a more of a level of, with our part-time staff, or maybe it's appreciated but not, conveyed. I can share an example of, we renovated the Southgate playfield this past year. We removed a tremendous amount of asphalt and added all this green space, and took this, dilapidated play structure. It's new play equipment, a splash pad, basketball, and the amount of the response from the neighborhood of appreciation for this transformation, it was unbelievable. I mean, we're still in the COVID, cautions right now, so we couldn't do a big in-person party, but we will when it's appropriate. We did a virtual ribbon cutting this year, but people can still go and use it safely. But the appreciation from the surrounding neighborhood is has come through, and so I know there's a lot of gratitude, but maybe it's just not always, verbally conveyed, or that I receive myself.
Right on. Where do you see this going, say the next 25 years? What's possible?
Well, we're in the midst right now of preparing for our agency accreditation review, which is coming up in May. And that has been about a 3-year project. And so first and foremost, we want to get accredited as an organization, which I think to me will be the kind of final seal of approval on, we have arrived. We check all those boxes in spite of our 100+ year history. We needed to tighten up some of our processes and make sure we were, operating to the highest level in terms of what the National Association deems is necessary as an organization. And so my hope is that, first of all, that continues, that the accreditation stays in place, and that's, incumbent on the staff to carry that forward in the future years, which is, still a good amount of work. But I hope that, the core values that we hold, and the things that really have made us who we are, the history, we're actually adding to our history. We had history written up till about 1980, and we are now picking up the 1980s and carrying that up to present day. So we want to preserve a lot of that history. But I hope that, especially the value of affordability is maintained, and the commitment to serving everybody that wants to be a part of our programs, and that we continue to work to meet the needs of the people that don't just naturally, acclimate to our programs, but that we work hard to make sure that everybody that wants to be involved can be, and that we're really serving the needs of the community and identifying what those needs are.
I think it's at a really important point, and I've been around here long enough to know that there is a lot of good work that just goes unnoticed. So the more that, as you had said, we need to go beyond just mailing the brochures, and we need to go deeper in making those connections and building those relationships to let people know that this is available to them. I got to ask you, because this is about health. I mean, we've been talking about everything but that, but I think it fits in nicely with this. How does recreation and health go together from your experience and tenure as part of recreation?
Man, that's a great question. And we do kind of, laugh a little bit as a staff, is that a lot of times, I think ours takes a back seat, because we're out there running our programs in the evenings, on the weekends, year round. And as you know, from lots of, all the work you do inside and outside of your profession, sometimes we're the last ones to take care of ourselves. And so even though we are around a culture that promotes, positive activities, and um, we don't always take good care of ourselves in that regard. And I'm right there with everybody else. So we have to do a better job of that as people, like I said earlier, walking the talk.
Mhm.
It's yeah, it I don't know if you get caught up in, what you're doing, and maybe you just, you enjoy it so much that it doesn't become a first thought of yours, like, oh, I got to do my own. But then I will say, like, a lot of us do, we are active,
Sure.
physically. We, some of that is learned behavior, and we had it, growing up, and it stayed with us. And so, when we do make a commitment, we have a step challenge right now as a staff, so we're, challenging ourselves to stay at least moving throughout the day. But if that's what you were getting at, I think it
Let's
is.
I think that's always a good reminder for us, especially in the world of Zoom, that we shouldn't be zooming for
Mhm.
12 hours without from the chair, if you will. But I
Indeed,
want to
yeah.
go another route because I want you to speak from the idea of the health of the community and recreation. How do you think recreation supports a healthy community then?
Oh, well, I mean, for certain, just in terms of the offerings of programs, I mean,
Hmm.
everything that is available to people to participate in, and also the open space that is available. I mean, I mentioned, we ourselves operate 52 play fields, but the county parks has facilities, the city has facilities. So I think we're pretty fortunate in Milwaukee for access to open space. Um, yeah, and so boy, that's a good question, David. I'm struggling a little bit with, because I just think it's kind of a natural thing. Like, okay, here it is. It's there before you. So again, I think it kind of comes back to that piece about, you can't just expect people to, get it for themselves. Sometimes we have to be the conduit that, makes connections for people. And, one of the things we're going to try to do a better job on is being more immersed in the neighborhoods at these play fields that we are now renovating. And so we're doing a number of community engagement. It's a little more challenging now, doing things virtually, but we will get back to that. But with the community engagement, we're talking to residents about what they would like to see at their neighborhood playfield. And so based on that feedback, we're going to, develop our programming around those desires. So I think that's important as an organization, is not to just assume what people want, but the whole community engagement is getting that feedback and then developing your programs based on that feedback. So we're starting a small program at a elementary school on the north side this spring, and all the classes are based on what the residents gave us as feedback for their top classes. So if these don't fill up, or at least get minimums, I would be surprised. But I think, yeah, the other piece of our, part of our role is really identifying where the gaps are, um, and then working with the community to fill those gaps. So.
That really said it well, and you've been on the edges of this, but you've mentioned several times this idea of collaboration. You said community engagement, this idea of being immersed. And health is more than just an offering where it's healthcare access or a place to go. people have to have that connecting point. And when you talk about the idea of, you can't just have programming, but you got to have the idea of playgrounds and programming and a way for people to get access to that. And so maybe this whole thing is about the idea of, again, the City of the Lighted Schoolhouse, the place where people know that they are welcomed and that they can find what we can find out what their needs are and strive to meet their needs.
Yeah, for sure. Because, ideally everybody would be able to walk to, within walking distance of a park or a space where they can, recreate. And we're not there yet, but certainly accessibility is a huge part. And, to your point about collaboration, boy, the number of partnerships that we have, I mean, we aren't doing this work alone by any means. We have first of all, with our after school programs, we partner with a number of community-based agencies that partner to hire staff and work in the schools with us to provide those programs. Our partnership for the arts program, boy, tremendous amount of arts and humanities partners that we interact with to provide these programs, through us. So you're right. It's not just about, for sure, what we do, but it's what we do in partnership with all these other organizations that really make things happen. I'm glad you brought that up, because boy, this is not just a Milwaukee recreation initiative by any means.
Well, as we think about this, and I was thinking about that you've been in this space for some 110 years, you guys must be doing something right throughout the city. And this is never about one organization or one thing going alone, because this is big, the city is bigger than any one of us. But it's how we build those collaborations. And I think part of that work is built around equity, is about inclusion, is about thinking what the neighbors want and not just what we ought to give them. That gives us something to build on for the future.
Absolutely. And one of the unique parts about when we started the Community Learning Center program in the late 90s, which was targeting schools that weren't meeting, proficiency standards and helping students academically and physically after school, we had a unique model where we partnered with, grassroots neighborhood organizations that knew the families, the students of that school, the neighborhood. They were from the neighborhood. And that brings a whole nother level of, trust and knowledge that we didn't have, that really, I thought, was just one of the most creative parts of that whole program. And that still remains today.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Lynn, what gives you hope in the area of recreation and what you do as you look forward?
I always think it's just going to be around. Like, I can't see when the day will come that all people do is just work and go home, and that's that. I think, there's always going to be another, 16 hours in a day, or maybe more, maybe some less, that need to be filled between sleep and, shopping and whatever else. But like, to me, it recharges you. It resets your mental health. And so unless we become robots, in 100 or 200 more years, I feel like there always is going to be that desire to, whatever it looks like. And again, I'm not putting recreation in a box. I'm not saying it's just sports or it's just, crafts or things like that. Whatever it is, I feel like it's always going to be around, and it's going to be that thing that people go to for rejuvenation and for, good feelings and happiness. And I don't see that ever going away. So I'm hopeful, for that legacy of this thing we call recreation will be there.
I never was interested in being a robot anyway. So like when
I know.
I just never, I wasn't. But that idea of rejuvenation, the idea of energy, and the idea of happiness is something that we do want to see as we go forward. Lynn, is there anything else you want to tell our audience today?
Well, I should have some compelling conclusion, but well, I mean, I just want to say how much I appreciate the chance. We could talk for forever, or at least I could, about the work that we do and how fortunate I feel to be in this role. And it's just so I really enjoyed it because every day we don't really talk about it. We're just kind of head down, doing the job, doing the work, do on to the next project. But when you really sit back and take a look at the impact that your work has, it's cool to talk about. And I hope the listeners enjoy it and, give thought. I was on a webinar recently and the instructor said, okay, I want everybody to think of a hobby. And I sat there and I was like, oh, what hobbies do I have? I was struggling with it. And then she said, adults have such a hard time with that question. And I was like, right on. So I hope nobody has that challenge that when you're asked to think of a hobby, I hope something really pops right into your head and excites you. And if it doesn't, hey, look up Milwaukee Recreation and let us help you find a hobby. But just take advantage of your free time and find something that really makes you happy.
Your excitement and enthusiasm, not only for your work, but for life, is evident. It is such a joy to talk to you, and I'm so glad that our audience could get to know Milwaukee Recreation just a little bit better. Lynn, how can people find Milwaukee Rec? Where do they go?
Well, if you have access to the internet, I think our website is fantastic. We even have stories on it. So, human interest stories, you can find out about things going on. But MilwaukeeRecreation.net, that's our website. Pretty easy to remember, all one word, MilwaukeeRecreation.net. And then our main phone line is 414-475-8180. Give us a call. Our spring classes will start probably around the end of March. So that activity guide will be going out later part of February. And, we just keep moving through COVID and hope that we're going to fill a few pools this spring and start getting back small size classes, but it's a step in the right direction. So gradually I see things, light at the end of the tunnel here, but let us help if we can. If you have ideas, share them. We're always trying to, improve things.
That is fantastic. And I know that she is a woman of her word. Lynn Greb of Milwaukee Recreation, thank you for coming on the Days of Learning podcast today.
Thanks so much, David. It was so fun. I appreciate it.
What a powerful story Lynn and her team have crafted around recreation in the city of Milwaukee. She started off with talking about the history and how recreation was viewed as the city of the lighted schoolhouse here in this community. But she went so much deeper in talking about programming, talking about the idea of collaboration and making connections to the community. It was such a joy to talk to her, to think about how we think about health and to think about the well-being of our citizens, that idea of that recreation is fully integrated with our community and that it is a part of the glue that holds us together, and that it can be so much more than just something fun, but it can really be something meaningful and something actually that can change someone's life. I hope you've enjoyed this Days of Learning podcast. I am your host, David Nelson. And if you enjoyed this podcast, drop us a line. We ask you to listen, to subscribe, and to pass it on to others. Until next time, I am your host, and this is the Days of Learning podcast. Goodbye.